the land of wolves. Death unto the weak, no mercy 0. The 9 divine generals won before his eyes were bundles of documents piled up into mountains. After finishing the first mountain, Keisha Gold massaged the skin around his eyes and slowly stood up. Keisha, oh dear, it appears that I am showing signs of being a tad strained. In the Valatian Empire, it was normal for the strong to be revered and for the weak to be disdained. Since such a stern, ironclad rule of blood was imposed widely, it was indeed easy to form misunderstandings, but it was not as though everything was driven by the clash of swords sparking against each other. Though it might have been obvious, there was also the existence of negotiations unaccompanied by a sword, purely by means of words, money, and goods. Since there existed people who engaged in such negotiations, and though this also may be obvious, there was also a considerable amount of paperwork. Keisha, His Excellency often preaches the importance of civil officers, but after all, it would be a thorny path to spread such an awareness among the people of the empire. In Wallachia, ever since the time that one was a young child, there were many things decided based on physical strength. If the standard of value were purely brute strength, then it would not be difficult to imagine the treatment of those unsuited for fighting. The public gaze of the empire's sword wolves was harsh on those who pretended to be wise. It would have been better had it been only the public gaze that was harsh, but because their harshness went as far as their claws and fangs, it was a great deal of trouble for the weak. In reality, Keisha had been one who had faced extreme hardship during his childhood. Although, in Keisha's case, when in a direct confrontation with an opponent he was no match for, he would make full use of tools and arithmetic to launch a counterattack, or would manipulate language and information to turn his opponents against each other. So he was left undefeated. However, Keisha, if you are defeated, you lose your life, and if you fight back, you lose your place. It seems a pity that I am not suited to the soil and water of the empire. Ultimately, since that disposition of Keisha's was the cause of him leaving his hometown, it became tempting for him to lament just how absurd life could be. Be that as it may, it could be said that he was rather lucky, for his life had not been exhausted as he drifted through the stream. Keisha. Only, muttering to himself, Keisha stood as he gazed out of the window of the room that was granted to him so that he could perform his official duties. Positioned at the innermost place of Wallachia's imperial capital of Lupugana, the Crystal Palace. This castle, known for having the foremost beauty within this world, was a rare article that the people of the empire could find value outside of strength in. Extolled to have such beauty, the gardens of the castle had also been extremely intricately designed, but stranger. Ahahahaha. Hold on, Anya. There's no way you'll be able to seize me like that. Are you perhaps messing around, dozing off, or getting distracted? Erikia. Cecilis, I'll kill you. Cecilis. Doesn't that favorite phrase of yours become kinda empty after saying it for years? Erikia. I'll kill you. The gardens of the beautiful Crystal Palace. Its vegetation was ripped out one step after the other as legs kicked off the ground, and it was devastated by a vortex of flame that chased after the fleeing back. It was being painted over into a wretched spectacle, never to be seen again. The rampage and voices that lacked any concern for their surroundings whatsoever was a playful bout between two fellow natural disasters, one that nobody would heedlessly approach. That was the reality unfolding in the Crystal Palace of His Excellency the Emperor, who sat at the pinnacle of the empire. Upon beholding it, Keisha narrowed his long-slitted eyes, expressing his feelings of lament. Stranger, General First Class Cecilis, General First Class Erikia, cease this folly. Just where do you think you are right now? This is the revered castle of His Excellency the Emperor Vincent Wallachia. Compose yourselves. As if speaking by proxy for those inner thoughts of Keisha, a deep, angered voice broke into the garden where lightning and flame entwined. However, it seemed like the owner of the angered voice did not realize that he was helping to raise the level of the increasingly noisy atmosphere, so the voice accomplished nothing but adding fuel to the lightning and fire. Cecilis, oh, Gaz-san, if you have any complaints, please direct them towards Anya and not me. After all, I'm just bustling about like I usually do. Erikia, Gaz, hindrance. Gaz, all right. Are neither of you listening? You are lacking in self-awareness as generals." At the situation, which only continued to become more obstreperous and noisy, Keisha silently left the window. Then, while massaging his brow with his fingers once again, Keisha, "It should not have turned out this way. Oh, how I pity myself." With that, he expressed lament of his own circumstances once more. To one of the 9 divine generals of the Valatian Empire, Keisha Gold was granted the position of 4th. Whenever he looked directly at that title of his, Keisha would make a sour face at how unbalanced it was. Unbalanced in the sense that he was not worthy, and in the sense that it was a position he had not desired. Keisha, the 9 divine generals are the honor of military strength, a title that ought to be granted only to military men who are worthy of the seat of general first class. It would have been better for me to be made prime minister instead of granting it to that turbulent individual. Stranger, stop being half-assed. How about you just accept your fucking position, Keisha? When Keisha spilled his miscellaneous thoughts, a visitor interjected vulgarly, stepping into the office, using the entirety of his small body to occupy the sofa, the hyena person of small stature, Keisha. "General First-Class Groovy Gumlet, are you not unsatisfied with the fact that I am one of the 9 divine generals, not to mention one who is above you in rank?" "Groovy, don't make me fucking laugh, goddammit. The topmost one is Cecilus. As long as that doesn't change, then the order of the ones under him doesn't have any significant meaning. You should know that too, bastard." Keisha, as usual, in contrast to your appearance, speech, and conduct, you are quite the capable intellectual. I am impressed. Groovy, that means you think that I'm a fucking idiot, doesn't it? Goddammit, Keisha. Flashing his sharp fangs, Groovy tried to intimidate Keisha with his cute and round eyes. Though his outward appearance was not very menacing, as 6th of the 9 divine generals, he was one of the Empire's strongest warriors. And unlike Keisha, that title was not merely a decoration. Be that as it may, that he had paid a visit to Keisha's office like this was not for the sake of an important discussion between 2 fellow first-class generals of the Empire about asserting influence over the future of Valatia. Rather, Groovy, Cecilus and Erikia, that fucking goddamn duo, they had the nerve to mess up the gardens that I tend to. Keisha, you bastard, you better properly discipline them. Indeed, it was for the sake of pleading his complaints on the matter of the garden's wretched state. Groovy was a distinguished warrior of the Empire, but he also possessed notoriety as a craftsman and artist, separate to that of being a warrior. The gardens, which played a part in the beautiful scenery of the Crystal Palace, were also one of his works. Known as the master of cursed tools, Groovy was enthusiastic about developing arms and weapons for the purpose of killing and harming people. And he was also well versed in the restoration of old buildings and ruins that held historic value. On that point, he could see eye to eye with Keisha, who could feel the grace in the functional aspects of antiques. Keisha, first, Groovy, let me preface this by saying that I fully understand the sentiments of the generals, but let me just tell you this. Groovy, oh, what is it, what is it? If it's just a fucking standard apology, then there's no point. Keisha, I will first answer that I have no reason to apologize. At any rate, it is not my duty to discipline Cecilus, for there is no position which even does so. Groovy, you're refusing to discipline him. Are you fucking abandoning your duty as his owner? Groovy's eyes looked utterly perplexed, but Keisha was the one who found it unbelievable. He had certainly known Cecilus for a long time, but Keisha was not his parent, sibling, or anything of the sort. Keisha had no obligation to educate or discipline Cecilus, and besides, stranger. Groovy, unreasonable. Cecilus, anybody, discipline, impossible. Sitting on the floor, Meguro Hagane spoke by proxy for the conclusion of Keisha's inner thoughts. Meguro, who called themselves a steelfolk, a peculiar race whose bodies were made out of metal and minerals, could have been mistaken for an avant-garde decoration if they simply sat there and remained silent. According to what Keisha had heard, the first meeting between Groovy and Meguro, who now had a surprising friendship, seemed to be when Groovy thought Meguro was a furnishing of the Crystal Palace and had tried to put them away into storage. Regardless of their start, the two had become close, and now the both of them were paying a visit to his office together. However, the fact that they were close friends and cooperating to do whatever they were told were separate matters. Groovy. Ah, what the hell are you saying? Goddamn you, Meguro. Even though I came to complain about those two fucking idiots making a fucking mess, how do you have the nerve to oppose me? Meguro. Invited me gardening. Your complaint, support incorrect. Groovy, got it. I've been double-crossed by my friend. How could this possibly be fuck? Groovy clutched his head in perplexity, and his fur scattered as he raged atop the sofa. Observing that state, Keisha let out a "that is it" as he fiddled with his bangs. Groovy, what is that? Got it. Keisha, it's the same as how General First Class Meguro did not do what you told them to just now, General First Class Groovy. Cecilis will not do what I tell him to. Therefore, your pleas to me are meaningless. Groovy, fuck! So then I'm supposed to be prepared for those fucking idiots to lay waste to the gardens each time I tend to them. Goddamit. Then just let it pile up with sand. Fucking hell. Keisha, I understand your sentiments, so I will pass them on to His Excellency. For the time being, I would be grateful if that satisfied you. It was not enough of a counter-proposal to be referred to as such, but that was the extent of the compromise offered by Keisha. Groovy made a fairly bitter face regarding the matter and hesitated to nod, but Meguro. Groovy, compromise. With that, at the straightforward words of his friend, he made a profusely loud click of his tongue. 3 stranger. The stargazer who hangs round the palace, wouldn't it be better ta kill it? Was there at least one person who could visit without giving him a headache? Even though Keisha did not hold his head at these opening words, he did begin wanting to hold it. The stargazer, brought up as the topic of conversation, was a person who was neither a military officer nor a civil officer, but had special privileges to visit the Crystal Palace as he pleased, and they were someone whom even Keisha did not think of kindly. Be that as it may, Keisha, the information that it brings is adequately useful. Sir Albart, you should also be aware of that. Albart, of course, I'm plenty aware. But there are stargazers who got a similar position outside of it, ain't there? If that's the case, there shouldn't be a problem with replacing it. Keisha, in other words, sir, you think we ought to eliminate Yubulk Dono? Albart, it'd be pointless if the other stargazers were all tha same as it. But I've tortured enough of 'em ta understand that ain't the case. Saying that, Albart Dunkelken sat cross-legged on the reception table as he scratched his back. While he had the aura of a good-natured old man, he was the chief of the Shinobi, a group of extraordinary superhumans, and had deeply immersed himself in the dark side of the Empire for a long time, coming to be quite proficient at dirty work. Stargazers, those who devoted themselves to the fulfillment of the commandment that they received from the stars. Yubulk, who frequently visited the Crystal Palace, was one of them. Aside from him, there were some other stargazers here and there, and in order to question them about the authenticity of Yubulk's words, many were imprisoned and put through the hardship of torture by the hands of shinobi. Keisha, despite going to that extent, the words of Yubulk Dono could not be concluded as falsehoods. Albart, that's why I ain't sayin' we should get rid of all the stargazers. It's just that I want ta get rid of it. Keisha, Sir Albart, are you saying that that is for the sake of His Excellency the Emperor? Albart, that's just me feelin' good 'bout serving my duty as a general. Not only is this me seriously doin' my job, but it's also for the sake of His Excellency, right? Shamelessly, Albart tried to force his demands to be met. While Keisha was astounded by that stance, there was some truth to what he was saying. Especially since this old man known as Albart did not mainly serve due to loyalty or his conscience. At the extremities of probing into his own desires and way of being, he had been perfected as the apex of the shinobi, so it was important for Vincent's reign that he treated Albart well to keep his mind open. However, Keisha, it is going a bit too far for you to try and bend His Excellency's will by flashing your military might. Albart, good grief, as expected, you're most frightenin' out of 9 divine generals. Keisha, oh, to receive such an evaluation from the vicious old man himself, I am surprised. Albart, if it was only 'bout being strong, then it would be Seshi or Araki, but your strength ain't somethin' that can be compared to those kinds of aspects. Surprisingly, that's the same as it right. Keisha, Albart, In this country, I think the ones who get up ta the worst stuff are guys like ya. Being spoken of with quite an unexpected appraisal, Keisha made an astonished expression. Seeing him in that state, Albert laughed with an amused kakakakaka and jumped up. Dropping from the table to stand on the floor, he turned his back and waved his hand. He probably came in with the expectation that luck may be on his side, but yielding upon understanding that it would not come to fruition was quite manly. Albert had survived for so long to that age not just because he was strong, but because he was tough. Keisha, only, it was probably an exaggerated opinion that I am the most frightening. Albert, you're free to think that way, just as I'm free to think this way. The fact that he had no intention of bending his opinion was a trait of Albert, who seemed like he was reasonable, yet refused to understand others. Flashing his teeth as he smiled, the old man departed, and as Keisha saw him off, he massaged the skin around his eyes with his fingers. His shoulders were also stiff from all the paperwork, but taking consultations again and again in his office like this was also troublesome. In the first place, why was everyone going to Keisha in succession? Keisha, I wish they would stop bringing things to me, just because it would be difficult to directly communicate such things to His Excellency. Of course, everyone probably had the consideration not to bother Vincent in his busy position, but Keisha being chosen as a substitute was probably not the entire reason for this. Was it because it was easy to speak to him? Or perhaps, stranger, well, ain't that just 'cause if His Excellency was willing to lend an ear, it's unthinkable that it would be for anyone, except General First Class Keisha. Keisha. General First Class Balleroy. Leaning against the open door, what Keisha saw from within the room was a tall figure who gave off an elegant atmosphere. It was the man known as Balleroy Temiglyph. He called out Keisha's name, and upon seeing the latter's reaction of a slight frown, Balleroy shut a single one of his eyes and, Balleroy, what's wrong? Is there something on my face? Keisha, no, it is just that I feel strangely linked by fate with the divine generals today. General First Class Balleroy, since I have now happened to see you, today I have seen the figures or heard the voices of all except General First Class Yorna. Balleroy. Well, I've also had some strange days. While we're on the topic of strange and peculiar things, General First Class Keisha, would you like to relax for a bit and go on a long ride with me? Balleroy walked up to Keisha as he made a proposition, and hearing that, the wrinkles on Keisha's brow became increasingly deep. As an oddball to the many obstinate folk within the 9 divine generals, Balleroy possessed an exceptionally honest human nature. Nonetheless, he was not such a close friend that he would make this kind of proposal. Keisha, if that were to happen, it would be in accordance with Cecilis's suggestion and expectations, though. Balleroy, ta-ha, now that's the level of discernment I would expect from ya. At Keisha's identification, Balleroy placed his hand on his forehead and laughed. Balleroy, just as you guessed, Cecilis had requested that I do this. Somehow, it seemed that he felt responsible for ruining the gardens together with Arakia. Keisha, General First Class Balleroy, if you are a general, you ought to handle information properly. Balleroy, General First Class Keisha, it seemed he was worried that what happened in the gardens was causing wrinkles to gather on your brow. So he asked if I could take you flying through the sky to help take your mind off of things. Keisha, as usual, I am surprised he is a man who is capable of leaning in the direction of thoughtfulness. Although, on top of being a moment of rare thoughtfulness, relying on Balleroy instead of his own strength seemed to be a sign of growth. If there was not really a glimpse of growth, then with his own philosophy, which was incomprehensible to others, he would have tried to carry out his gratitude towards Keisha using his own strength. Balleroy, so then, what shall we do? Would you like to relax for a short while on my carillon? Keisha, I appreciate the proposal, but I also have piles of work to get through. Balleroy, oh my, that's too bad. I wish I could help out, but unfortunately I've never been remotely good at this kind of work. Staring at the heaps of documents atop the desk, Balleroy scratched his cheek. Even so, the fact that he was apologetic about being unable to help out made Balleroy much more personable than the other divine generals. It was something that neither Groovy, nor Meguro, nor Albart, nor anyone else had brought up. If it were Cecilis or Arakia, they would have probably exemplified their refusal at merely the sight of the mountain of documents. Henceforth, Keisha, for the time being, it seems that there is a need for me to carry this burden on my back. With that, the man, who alongside Cecilus was indispensable to the 9 divine generals, massaged the skin around his eyes once again. End.